We are back again for another Penn State football commitment. Ryan Snyder, Penn State football recruiting reporter. I've been off for 3 days. I'm sorry. Recruiting reporter here with us here on the BWI Live YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm Thomas Frankar, and he is here to tell you about what is going on with the Nittany Lions. If you heard that graphic, you saw that thing in the open, you know Penn State's getting another commitment. So, Ryan, where are we going for the latest Nittany Lion?
Well, last Friday, right? Terry Wiggins commits, and we talk all about, they got Terry Wiggins now. Now it's all about Mathieu Canu. Well, Mathieu Canu is actually technically Mathieu Lamah. He wanted to clarify with that this week, heading up to this commitment, and that's what we're going by now. So Mathieu Lamah, of course, 6'3", 220 middle linebacker out of Manassas, Virginia, Patriot High School. Listen, he's been one of Penn State's top guys for quite some time now. He visited for the whiteout game last November. Picks up an offer a couple days later. Basically, they wanted to make sure that he, stacked up measurables wise, which he absolutely does. I mean, 6'3", 220, that's all legit. Might even be a little bit over 220 now. I'll have to see if I can get an updated number. Yeah. I mean, look, to me, and we'll get into this. Let me clarify recruitment first. I mean, that visit was really important to him. He made it very clear that Penn State really was the team right off the bat, and he didn't leave that first visit with an offer, and made it known that this was an offer that he was going to work hard for no matter how it came. And fortunately for him, it came 3 days later. So they really just wanted to see his measurables. And so he came back then for the Maryland game, at the end of the season. That was a great visit. Once you get that offer, you get a little more attention, things like that. And, his thing was just like every time I visited, it was just a massive boost for Penn State. Came back for a January junior day, and then I believe one more visit this spring. And, he said he would go on to other schools, and basically what he found himself doing was going to see other schools and then just comparing it to Penn State. And it was oftentimes just a boost for Penn State in the way that he looked at their coaching staff and the way they go about things. So I was very curious myself to see how that Michigan visit would go. It was about mid-November, I think November. April 19th-ish, I believe is what the date was, which he did admit, like, that was probably one of his best visits outside of Penn State. But at the end of the day, he just kind of felt like he was denying the inevitable. Terry Wiggins, of course, commits. He and Terry do have a relationship. They've gotten to know each other on a few visits now. And I think that's kind of how this all came about. There was a in-home visit with Dan Connor last week, too. That's always an important milestone kind of in a lot of recruitments. I think that connection, those conversations with Connor had a bit to do with it. But, he knew he wanted to be at Penn State. There's no reason to let another linebacker commit, and then potentially it gets dicey. And look, I don't think I think Mathieu could have committed regardless. He could have probably taken his OVs, committed in July, August, wherever, and they still would have taken him because he's been that important to them. He's the true middle linebacker in this class. There's a lot of Kobe King in him, and from what I see, I remember very well with Kobe. Now he's taller than Kobe. Kobe was around 6'1"-ish, I believe, and
Mathieu built similar though, and by that I mean he is an absolute brick house. This dude is built from the bottom up the same way.
Yeah. So, and this is what I see, right? I mean, that the question everybody is, is he a sideline guy? Probably not quite that, but there's a lot of Anthony Specca, a lot of Kobe King in here, which is that really smart player, a potential captain for your team in the years ahead, and is
I believe he was a captain on his team as a junior. I saw.
Oh, I'm sure he was.
Watching some of his games, he went out with the captain, so he's already got that leadership kind of baked in there, it seems.
Listen, he's an awesome kid. Like, I mean, I know Turtle is right. No favorites, blah, 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 blah. I'll be blunt. I mean, he's one of my favorites. I'll be very honest with you about it. And just because of his character, his personality, everything that he stands for, like, Penn State fans are absolutely going to love Mathieu Lamah. I have no doubts about that. And again, a lot of Kobe King. It's a great leader, probably a future captain, if he develops onto the field. And you just know what you're getting between the tackles. Like, he is not going to miss tackles, between the tackles. And, it's that consistency there. And I think Dan Connor and all those guys really saw that, what Kobe was able to do this year, what Speck is now kind of doing, emerging. And he's kind of going to be the next in that line from what I understand.
Yeah, and that's watching the film and watching a little bit of what he did in high school. There were some plays where he's playing true middle linebacker, lined up over the center, two other linebackers in the box. So a very old school approach at times. But it's interesting. Like you mentioned Anthony Specca, and he is more patient than Specca initially. But there's one thing that Mathieu Lamah likes to do, and that is come downhill, attack and blitz, or run at where the ball is. So from that perspective, I thought Kobe got a lot better in coverage, where he was understanding drops and he was understanding the game. That's obviously something that happens as a linebacker gets older and more mature. That you mentioned Kobe from a physical standpoint. From a mental standpoint, I'm curious if that's also going to be the timeline of a guy that has a lot of the characteristics you like, a lot of building blocks. But if you're going to play a mature game and you're not going to have athleticism to make up for mental mistakes, maybe you don't get on the field right away. So that I always try to understand like the timeline and also the players' physical abilities and that timeline as well from the mental and the physical side. And the physical side, like you mentioned, I was wondering out loud if he's got D-end versatility. I don't think he does. I don't think the length is there. Also, I don't think the burst, the explosiveness off the edge of what you would want in a D-end is there. So he's a Mike linebacker only, which I find interesting in the recruiting process, where you have guys that they have a couple of hybrids, right? Maybe a safety that can play linebacker, maybe a can play D-end, and then you got a couple of guys. Specca, you mentioned, Alex Tash would be another one these are just linebackers. And that's what they're going to play at this level. And so I think that development curve for him, he's got to know the game very well. And as you mentioned, he's a very smart kid, so that's all going to come with time. But I love the frame. You got a guy like that can play the run that way. And here's the last thing I'll say, kind of about the skill set and the perspective and the fit. I think ideally in this defense for Jim Knowles, you'd have both guys have athleticism, but that's the same for any defense. Let me just say. That's the same for any defense. Ideally,
yeah, we'd love to have Ray Lewis in the middle. We get it. Yeah.
Everyone's 6'3", 245. Everyone's Patrick Willis that can do all of it. But I think if you're going to play with a light box, having 6 players up there, it is valuable to have guys that have size and presence in the run game, maybe as their primary purpose, either a defensive tackle and a linebacker, one on each level, so that you feel like you have those tent pole things that then you can have the athleticism kind of spinning around that. So I think Canoe is very valuable in
Llama.
that sense. Excuse me, Llama. It's 6 months of deprogramming here.
I got you.
So I think Mathieu Lamah can bring that, Kobe King. We saw how valuable that was last year for the stability of the front seven. So I think ultimately, even from the impact he can have, it'll be on that same timeline. And the value of that, as opposed to the height, weight, speed guys, the Terry Wiggins, the Tony Rojas of the world, I still think you need both in the defense.
Oh, yeah. And they're going to try and add more. I mean, I feel like we could just cut and paste our last podcast or our last one and just fill in the back end, because I'm going to say the exact same thing that we said on Friday after Wiggins, and that's the fact that they need to find another athletic outside linebacker in this class. Just if you just look at the landscape and the guys that they're pursuing, like it was very clear that they had focused on Mathieu Lamah as their middle linebacker, and they knew they were in a good position there, and they got their guy, and now they feel good there. Of course, you have Kari Jackson in there. Like you got some young middle linebackers. They're good there. It's now about finding, those true athletic kind of freakier guys that can, go sideline to sideline. You got one in Terry Wiggins. You got Rodney Colton, who came and visited. You got Cozy Akpala, who didn't get here in the spring, but I'm telling you, Penn State's in that mix more than you think. It's not gonna be easy getting them from Texas. I'm not trying to pretend that it will, but they're in the mix there. A lot of other guys too. We could go all day. Ellis Alloway. There's a bunch of other guys that I think that they have a lot of intrigue with, and getting another athletic linebacker to fit in this class is the goal. We'll see where the chips land, but I think they're incredibly happy to have these two committed, firm. I don't think there's going to be really any concerns with Mathieu or Wiggins, because just the way their recruitments have trended, the way they are is they got these guys. I feel pretty confident in that, and now you can really, if you're Dan Connor, focus on those national guys that you still have to do work with.
Yeah. And I think just kind of the conversation we've had here, because Mathieu Lamah is fairly well explained within the Penn State hierarchy, you can just say, like we just did, Kobe King. That's the end of the conversation, truly. But the value and the fit and all those things, I think, to me, are the interesting things. And I think that's also reflected in the On3 and the consensus rankings. So let's just look at those again quickly. So he's 275 in the On3 national rankings, right? But in the overall rankings, he's a 3-star by 3 of the different services. Do you see that leveling out? Do you see that as a reflection in the different values you might put on certain things? Is he a guy that's gotten around from a recruiting perspective because fans will, there are a certain percentage of fans that will say this is not a 4-star, so this is a miss. And we're trying to add the context of this is a valuable piece in the puzzle. Do you think that he could eventually find his way to that consensus 4-star ranking? And do you think that it matters necessarily?
This is kind of not what you're answering, but I know you were off a few days, but you may have seen it on 3 by Rivals. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out, considering Rivals right now is his lowest rating pretty substantially. Well, not substantially. 24/7 has him as 58th ranked linebacker. Rivals has him at 63. On 3 has him at 19. There's a massive difference there, right?
Right.
So time we'll see. We don't know what's going to happen with Rivals rankings too. Like that's kind of the thing I want to see. Or will there even be on 3 rankings? Maybe it'll be Rivals. But that's a dynamic that we kind of have to figure out here and see what happens, because it's going to change how this industry ranking works. So listen, I think more often than not, when we have a guy at on 3 ranked pretty highly, others catch on to it, right? I know what Charles and those guys do. I know the amount of work that they put in as far as digging up on measurables and all those things. It's not perfect, right? There's certainly been guys that we have rated highly and others don't, and are lower in the end. We've seen that, but I feel pretty strongly about the scouting staff that we have here. And I think if you look over the last couple of years, usually others kind of catch on to it. Whether he'll be a top 20 linebacker, time will tell. But I feel pretty confident that he's better than 63 and 58. I do feel strongly about that. I know Penn State would tell you that that's too low. But whether 20 is kind of his ceiling or whether he kind of finishes in the 30s, time will tell.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll sort all of that out this week on the BWI live show, which is coming back. It's airing, if you're watching this on Monday, it's airing on Tuesday. So I try to make these all very timeless in terms of, like, if you watch this in 6 months, that we're talking about Mathieu Lamah. At the same time, there's a lot going on dynamic to this particular time of the year because it is early May. These commitments are coming fast and furious, and they're about to get, go to hyperspeed because we're getting into official visit season. Penn State had an official visitor this past weekend. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is your place to get all that information. The place we talk about it, give you the context, is here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like this video. That always helps us. And BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, if you subscribe there, we'll get you your information all the way through the recruiting process. For Ryan Snyder, I'm Thomas Ryan Carr. We'll be back with the next one when Penn State news breaks.